And I do thank you very much for the title of Extraordinary Outcomes of Voluntary Conservation. It's very humbling, and just thank you so much for this opportunity. See here, now I am a notorious hand talker, so lucky you, this presentation just got 50% shorter. So, but I'm going to start out today, and then and we'll bring Jeremy up here in a minute. But I wanted to do a little bit of an introduction and tell the story of the Wilson family farm. I'm sort of the unofficial family historian, and so 10 generations ago in England, the Wilson family decided to pick up all their things, and they came over to Pennsylvania about the same time as William Penn. Came from Pennsylvania, farmed there, farmed in Indiana, then to Kansas, went up to South Dakota, gave that a shot, didn't work out, they went back to Kansas, and then in 1920, Jeremy's great-grandparents, Susan and J. Harry Wilson, moved their 6 youngest children of their 5 children of their 8 children. In 1920, they loaded everything up on the train and came to Jamestown. And in 1920, Jeremy's grandfather was born, the only child to be born in North Dakota. So I can't imagine being very, very largely pregnant and bringing everything, including Molly the horse, on the train up to Jamestown. But that's how the Wilson family got to North Dakota. And then around 1943, Grandpa Bill Wilson met this young woman named Ruth, and they started a family. And the children came along pretty quickly. They had 4 children and 2 young twins on the ground in July 1st, 1957, when Grandpa lost his leg in a farm accident. And so that really changed the game. They had developed one of the first dairies in the region, and Grandma was trying to do all the chores by herself, and so they made a really pivotal decision to liquidate the livestock, and then the farm was transitioned mostly to crops. And so when Jeremy grew up farming with his dad and his uncle on the Wilson farm, there wasn't any livestock. So we'll talk about how we're bringing them back. And so this is our current family photo when we were awarded the Leopold Award. And so we have Charlotte, who has just turned 12, Molly, who's just turned 10, and Sam, who is 7, who I think he carried that sign around that whole night. he's very proud. So what's extraordinary about our story? We're just so humbled to be able to tell this story and to have been awarded the Leopold Award. The extraordinary part of our story is the story that God is writing. The extraordinary part is our predecessors, some of which we have never met. I never got a chance to meet Jeremy's grandmother, but so many farmers and scientists and conservationists went ahead of us and have paved the way. So many mentors, including so many of the people in this room, have really shepherded us through our agricultural careers. And we're so thankful for our communities, and what the trendy word now is our tribes. So a lot of the farmers that are practicing the same conservation techniques that we've been working on, just moms, other farm moms, friends, everybody that has encouraged us along the way. And we really feel like we are just humble servants. We're temporary vessels here. The farmer's going to go on forever, but we're just temporary here. And we were really designed to fulfill this plan that God has written out. And really the best is yet to come. And so the personal philosophy that we follow is we order our life by our faith, our family, and farming in that order. And that has been really important as we've grown our family and gone through some pretty rough times, as many of us have faced challenges in agriculture and with our personal health. Again, you see how things are going today. And so one of the life verses that we carry with us is, whatever you do, do it with all your heart, as if working for the Lord and not for man. And one of the things that I cling to every day is really, why are we doing this? And our Molly made this little project in kindergarten, and her kindergarten wish was, it's hard to read there, and it's misspelled. She was in kindergarten, but it says, I wish that everybody had food. And so we really see ourselves as part of the solution to global hunger. So you'll see that some of the recipients of the products that we grow are very local, and some of them are international. And so we really, our farm supplies feed, food, and fuel, and pharmaceuticals, and all sorts of other products to families around the world. And I love the theme for today's conference because we really do consider ourselves in regenerative agriculture and nourishing land, livestock, and people. And you'll hear more about our livestock above and underground when Jeremy gives his portion of the talk. And the three principles that our farm operates on, it's more like a three-legged stool, are stewardship, innovation, and outreach. And here, Jeremy will give you more detail about those conservation techniques that maybe, I think, make us extraordinary. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
That's great.
I'd rather have my... Let me shut it off. So, my name's Jeremy Wilson. I'm a soil caretaker. Sometimes the electronic devices just slow us down, right? There we go. So I've been a student of the soil for my entire life growing up on our farm. And on your papers there it says outcomes. We're going to talk about outcomes today, and I really don't see much for outcomes. I see another step along the way, because we've got a lot of work to do, and we're always looking for a way to do it better. And as soon as we do it one way, then it's time to rotate and do it a different way, right? We're always evolving. So as we learn along the way and transition our farm from a tillage farm using the latest and greatest technologies and getting really good at those technologies, including variable rate and management zone based precision farming. That's what we did in the mid and late 90s and early 2000s. And also at the same time that we're getting those practices implemented, perfected, and trying to go to the next level of production agriculture, we also were learning about our soils and doing our own soil sampling. We really learned about how to try to enhance the most important part of our soils, the organic matter level. So upon that research, we learned that if we stop our tillage, we can stop degrading our organic matter level and maybe get onto a build type of setup. So we started implementing no-tillage practices, and I got to meet Rick Bieber and Dwayne Beck, two integral parts of our transition, and I'm glad that I met the right people early. We implemented their practices right away, and we started really towards these 5 principles of soil health that are articulated so well recently by the folks here in Burleigh County, the guys on the board and the farmers they work with. And I like to take our story and really tie it back to those 5 principles that they talk about today, because it really is at the core of taking care of our problems, you know, our needs, and also paving the way for a better future. So to work through these and how we're doing this on our farm in a real short time frame, I'll click through pretty quick, but one of the most important things we learned about keeping this was to keep the soil covered and slowing down erosion. We had gotten pretty good at this, implementing the stripper heads on our wheat, you know, in different pieces along the way. And then later in the mid and late 2000s, tying them all together, and then taking a step back and understanding these things and being able to implement practices that we are today. Do not disturb. It really is part of the first one as well, but they're so different because you can not disturb the soil and leave it bare, you see that everywhere it's called a desert, right? That people leave, but it doesn't help the soils at all. So we're trying to minimize or eliminate these things that take away from our soils and enhance products that can bring in what they're missing, which is carbon. So you can see that we're keeping the soils covered here. That rye is on its way out, and the corn is right there about V4. It gets a little bit of sulfur at that point, and then we also seed our cover crops about that same time. So in time, that's what we're doing today, and that's how we're tying these 5 principles together to some of the things we'll talk about in a minute that I'm really excited about. So this is what they do across the road, and we used to do that too. I mean, everybody knows this story. If you leave it bare and use disruptive soil practices, you cannot withstand the climate and the weather that comes from time to time. So when the wind goes down, you go and assess all the damage and say, well, thank goodness the wind quit. That probably won't happen again like that. I don't know how many more years we can be so wrong. But you can be right for maybe a year or two and then be wrong again. Then you're right for a year or two and wrong again. So that loss of topsoil that I talked about in the Leopold folks in the video, Dr. Dave Hopkins was measuring some sites where they had measured and took the soil pedons and did measurements. In 1958, they had 6.3 inches of topsoil in the AP horizon. Then there was the B horizon, and then the C horizon started at 34 inches down in the soil, right? A whole yard in the soil. So imagine your yardstick. There's 28 inches of B horizon in between there, right? So when they came back in 2014, they measured, and they still have topsoil, but the B horizon is gone, and the topsoil is resting on top of the C horizon. So now every time you mix your topsoil, you're getting bits of subsoil in. So you're degrading this. You're not only mixing your topsoil into your B horizons in these type of areas. That's not going to happen anymore. When you get enough of your B horizon gone, you're into the C horizon. Now you're mixing your topsoil with the C horizon. So this tillage it's not going to fix any of this, and more tillage isn't making it any better. So if you think we have some problems in our soil today, let's keep doing the same thing and see if we can fix it for tomorrow. So that's an eye-opening data and eye-opening, look into, our history and our soils. I can bring up an aerial map of every field on our 4,500 acre farm. And every one of them from the last time it was tilled, and you will see the C horizon sticking out on the hilltops, and partway down the slopes you'll see where there's A horizon mixed into it, and then maybe in the bottom where we were able to maintain some of the topsoils, or some of the topsoils get washed into, we still have some profile. Unfortunately, that degradation still will continue, even with a no-tillage system, or just using a cover crop system. but taking the 5 soil principles all together, encompassing, is today the best way forward to change that degradation into using your soil resource or getting the right soil practices applied to it. So focus on those 5 soil principles. You saw the wind erosion picture a slide or 2 ago. I was pretty concerned about my baby sunflowers, so I went to check on them. And this is my field on that day. Those are sunflowers. You know how damaging the wind is, right? So we have the stripper cut stubble, and then we have rye and hairy vetch seeded together. 2 rows every 30 inches, and then we put the sunflowers in at 30 inches. So really, we have a nice stale area for our sunflowers to grow without competition to get a nice start. All the while, we have protection from the elements: wind, water, sun. We're also hosting countless biology, not just 1 or 2 types, a diverse biology with the roots, with plants, above ground, below ground. We have prey for the predators. That leads into the third one, getting this diversity in your system. So we started looking into how we grew wheat, and we thought, well, it's a whole field of wheat. What's the diversity? Well, we had soybeans before that, or we'll have soybeans after it. So if you look into rotations, Rick Bieber will call it an oscillation, not a rotation. So same as corn and soybeans, an oscillation, not a rotation. Raise your hand if you've seen Rick Bieber with his pinwheels, talking about crop rotations and diversity. You ever see Rick Bieber with pinwheels? Buckle up, because you're going to learn a lesson that couldn't be more simple, but full of truth. So look forward to that. You can probably find it on the YouTube if you look. So diversity. Both Sam and I think are really exciting, and we've looked at every crop we grow and every acre we farm, and how can we put diversity in each situation. So here's our after our wheat and before our sunflowers diversity. And you see the sunflowers grow pretty fast. They can grow up past those things, and they did pass the vetch this year before the vetch kind of closed in. So that was a pretty fun exercise, and when they slowed down its blooming, of course that's about the time the sunflower started their blooming. In our wheat, we thought, well, in our entire system we didn't really have any cool season broadleafs, so we looked at the long list of cool season broadleafs that farmers can farm. And there's that flax, Hylia mycorrhizal. So what you're seeing there is 3 rows of wheat, 1 row of flax. We have a multiple tank air cart behind our air drill, so we put flax in one of them, and we had flax on every acre. We had some of it mixed with the wheat, some of it in roll fashions like that. And all of a sudden now, if our farm was 25% wheat, which it was that year, we also had 25% of it in cool season broadleafs. Well, if you look at your our wheat spectrum is grossly cool season broadleafs. The soil and the system is telling us, hey, you're missing something. It's going to put it in there for us. So now we're putting cool season broadleafs with a lot of different mixes and being very intentional about it. This wheat, only having 3 rows out of the 4, I seeded 75% seeding rate. So I had less wheat seed out there, and I had the same yield as the rest of the farm. It was a 75-acre field, I did it on a different site of 35 acres. So 10% of our wheat crop was seeded this way, and it yielded the same. So on this 75 acres, well, let's call it 100 for easy math. So out of the 100 acres in that field, it would be 75 acres of wheat, 25 acres of flax, right? 4 rows of wheat, 1 row of flax. So on the FSA map, you draw a lot of lines, right? Because this is not acceptable, and you don't have 75 acres of wheat, you don't have 25 acres of flax. But in their rules, this is allowable once they see their rules apply to the situation through a long conversation. So now if you take the same yield, which we got 62 bushels for a farm average that year, you take that 6,200 bushels, you put it on 75 acres, that's the highest yielding wheat we had to. And then we also sold 8 bushels of flax out of there, off the 100 acres. So 800 bushels of flax on 25 acres. All of a sudden we have some yields to talk about as well. We don't have a monocrop. So after about 3 years of trying to adapt these complex and interweave principles in our farm, we finally figured out how to do this, and this is what we did. So that was our first try at the whole thing all together, and it only took us 15 years to get this implemented on our farm, right? So if you can do it in 10, awesome, you're better than me, right? So that little spot where you don't get the seed turned on right away, or you get a slow meter or something on your air drill, the flax would all come out. So now all of a sudden we have a few pockets that are, you know, more beneficial than others for critters who like flax. What about our soybeans, or where we grow rye? So this is 3 rows of rye and 1 row left blank. We seeded that blank row after our wheat harvest, spring wheat harvest. We seeded rye in 3 rows, and then 1 row we had a diverse mix of, I think, 7 or 9 different broadleafs. They're all winter kill. So we'll come out in the spring and we have 3 rows of rye growing, and we seeded soybeans into the blank, and then we thought, well, let's just leave the rye, because I'd met a fellow by the name of Lawrence Steinlage, and him and John Kutzer doing it with winter wheat and double cropping soybeans. I thought, well, we could do that with rye. So let's try this in North Dakota, double cropping soybeans. So here I am harvesting my rye, and there's the soybeans. They were seeded mid-May, and this is in late July. We ended up with 18 bushel rye and 18 bushel soybeans. And if you look, we did not offset the planter yet. We weren't set up for it. We actually took out 25% of the rye when we seeded it. So the wheel traction, the planting tractor, planting soybeans, took out our rye. So if you do just a little bit of math, we come out way ahead on this once you fix our mistakes. So this field is usually in the bottom 10% of our soybean production. So I pretty much knew if I fail this, I didn't really lose anything, because I failed soybeans there every year. So 18 bushel beans, this field usually does 26 to 31. So if you take the money from the cost, I had to harvest it twice, right? So I had to apply my harvest twice to it on the math. And harvest expenses twice. We have 1 application of herbicide, 0 fertilizer, and the net income from here matched our farm average for soybeans alone that year. So we screwed it up pretty bad on our first try, and we didn't lose any money. So maybe we should do this again. So we actually messed up our row spacing when we seeded rye that fall, and so we didn't have a test for this year. But we have rye seeded this fall. then we'll be double cropping the soybeans again in a trial fashion. We had a lot of 15-inch, we had 200 acres of 15-inch rye that we seeded 15-inch soybeans into this year, and reluctantly terminated all the rye. But I think that that's what we're liking. If you're thinking about this yourselves, that's what we're liking better than the 3-in-1 or the 2 rye and the 1 soybeans. The 15-inch rye and 15-inch beans seem to be a little better. So where we grow corn, well, what do you put before your corn? You know, usually nothing or a lot of tillage, right? A lot of people do that. A lot. And then what do you do after the corn? Well, it's too late, right? Or you can fly it on, but if you don't get rain or the right conditions, your expensive airplane just blew out a bunch of expensive seed, and you're not maybe going to like your results. So we looked at applying it better timing, you know, with a cheaper rig, a ground rig. We looked at getting us spreaders and drop tubes for a sprayer and putting a dry box on and doing it that way. But I found some used ones because I'm a cheapskate, and every used one I found, which was 4 across the United States that were for sale that were used, and every one of those guys was going to interseeding with a drill between their corn, because the cost of the seed, which we all can all say on our cover crops, are, you know, you don't like the cost. Some of that stuff's pretty expensive. And then they felt that they weren't getting results year in and year out. So if you take a high cost thing and you only get to benefit from it or even see it 1 out of every 2 years, the cost is double. So something's expensive, it's now twice as expensive, it's still too expensive. So they're going to drill, so why would I follow their mistakes and then come to the same realization? I put together a drill, a single disc or a single opener in between each corn row, and we applied our cover crop that way. So which cover crop? Well, we're going to seed soybeans into our corn stalks usually, and we have 30-inch corn and 15-inch soybeans. So that's why we have 1 row in between, because we don't want to seed our soybeans into like the rye that comes into spring. So what we did here is have our rye mix, and we thought, well, if we seed early enough, we can establish this, the corn will shade it out and provide a little bit of slowdown, and then when the corn starts opening its canopy and drying down in the fall, that stuff will be established, and it'll just, you know, it'll get its turn, and it'll just take off and go. But in the meantime, being on Gabe's farm a few times, seeing his cowpeas, I thought, well, let's put some cowpeas in there as well. So now we have a 2-way mix, and I thought, well, we should have 6 or 8 or more because of the work we've seen in Burley County with how mixes work. So our goal was 8, and we ended up with 29 because we're really bad at making decisions. So which ones we got to throw out? So if you put 29 different species in a single row, pretty soon you realize there's not enough room for them. And what rates do you use? Well, common math says take a normal seeding rate of each one, divide them each by 29, and that's your seeding rate. So that gave us what I thought was a pretty heavy standard rye. So I did the population on the rye. I said, I have a rye every 1/16 of an inch. Well, that's not going to allow the cowpeas to grow. So then we started looking at population spacing within that row, and we got down to about $12 for that 29-way mix. Is that acceptable? I think so. So we did that on 1,000 acres, and we liked it on every acre. Just gets us into continuous living roots at all times. We're working on planting our corn into a green living crop. You saw some of the rye that we're playing with. So in the spring, we all live in North Dakota, right? In our cropland fields, it's hard to have a diversity in the spring if it's going to be for a certain crop. Pretty much rye is fall seeded or summer seeded, and it's really a slam dunk for getting something to be growing in the spring. So we have a little bit of rye up front, and then we'll kill that off, you know, after our corn is about B3 or so, and the rye is in a boot stage. We can get by without having the Lilliputhy effects. So what we think is happening, so be very cautious if you're going to try that on your own farm, use small acreage. But that corn is only really alone for about a week, because a week later we're seeding that cover crop in. And that cover crop seeded in mid to late June is growing all of July and August and September and October and November. And in an open December, it's there. We've seen rye grow 3 inches during December. But actually emerge and grow 3 inches in December underneath the snow. So we kind of figure it rests a bit in January and February, but in March, that is given new life again, and it grows through March and April and May until we terminate the rye portion of that. It's rye and triticale mix actually, because we're really up on this diversity. So we have how many months of continuous growth? How many chances of rain do you have every week, right? It could rain on any day of any week. But do you have something growing? Do you have something in your field to slow the raindrop down so it doesn't hurt your soil? Is there something there to use the moisture, to capture the sunlight that's there every day? So those are some questions that we're asking on our farm. And it's the reason why some of this type of mix is developed. The fall, the radishes really grow. This summer when it's warm, these cowpeas, they really grow and do great. But when it starts cooling off, they just seem to retire, and then the radishes come alive. So we have, much like our native prairies, when your cool season grasses are ripening and coming down, your warm season are coming up, right? You have that continual things growing, and not 4, 5, or 29 species. Our native prairies have hundreds, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe a 29 is not enough, right? So, and sometimes one plant helps another. There's our Austrian winter pea is getting a hold of the sunflower as a trellis. But what does this look like? What does this mean for when I talked about the rain? So Hal Weiser, this last, or 2 years ago, in the wheat and flax field, we were looking at infiltration on our field day, and it came out pretty good. And I said, well, how much is pretty good? He says, well, it's off the chart. Like, what's off the chart? What was native prairie? So I did a little math on it. I told him, well, Hal, I think we just infiltrated the water in your ring at 300 inches per hour. He says, well, that can't be right. What'd you do for the math? So I told him this is the math I use. He says, well, that checks out. I'm like, yeah, I know, I did it a couple of times too. Because in the soil book, it says our soils do about 2 inches per hour. And in all my research on controlled traffic farming, if you do everything just right and have your tires just right and all your spacings just right and a whole bunch of undisturbed, non-touched soil for many years in a row, you can get your soil infiltrations up to 6 inches an hour, and that's phenomenal. It's huge. You can actually change the face of your farm and how your soils operate and how you interact with your soils just by going to 6. And when I gave that 300 number to Hal, he says, well, we should do it again. He called me the next day and says, can I go out and do some more in that field? I said, well, yes, please. Pick me up on the way. So he gave me a text message, and he averaged the first inch at 260 some inches an hour. The second inch immediately put in was averaging in around 23 to 26 inches per hour, and the third inch is averaging at 9.6 or 9.7. He said, that's awesome. He said, I said, let's do some more next summer. So he picked a couple sites this last summer, and these are the numbers from that. Partway through the summer, here are the numbers. So between the tractor tracks, 3 sites in this same field, The first inch went in 32 seconds. That's 113 inches per hour. Here, the rain about a foot over went in 6 seconds. That's 600 inches per hour. Here, this one went in 3 seconds. That was like some kind of record, right? 1,200 inches per hour. So, well, how much rain is that? World record rainfall is right around 17 inches per hour. Most ever logged. There's so many inch rain in about, was it 7 or 9 inches. I ran interested a couple months ago at a presentation, but that's pretty awesome. But how many times do you get 2 or 3 inch rainfalls really quick? It's a pounding rain and you have a big gully washer, right? So I think that by applying these 5 soil health principles to our farm, we can slow that water down. We can put it in the soil so we can use it for the whole month that it doesn't rain. I mean, who else here lives in North Dakota and knows that sometimes it doesn't rain for a month? So the 3rd inch going in an average of 9.5 inches per hour on those 3 sites. So then you cross the road into a different soil and you have between the tracks, and he also picked out a wheel track. He didn't wait it on for that 3rd inch in the wheel track. So having less passes in your field and doing less things out in the field is definitely a big win. 60 inches an hour for an average. Infiltration on the 1st inch, 6 on the 2nd inch, and 3.9 on the 3rd inch. That's pretty exciting stuff. So this is what we're able to accomplish with applying these practices on our farm. But it really leads into what I heard Dwayne Beck say in, must have been about the year 2000, was if you don't have a crop failure in a heavy drought year, you're not using enough water in the years that you get it. And if you get enough rain, you'll end up with a water issue. How many people have tried to stop tilling on their farms and had just a water issue? You get stuck, or it just doesn't dry out. There's all these problems. So that's what got us into cover crops and looking at how to use water throughout the year when we get it. And we started that and we started cover crops in 2003, and it took us 15 years to figure out what we like to do is what we're doing today, to be continuous. So we're also playing with some biology. Here's one of the rings he just pulled out. We dig them out, we look underneath just to make sure there's not a large pore. Gets it all, the soil is all wet, and it looks just beautiful when we pull them up. And I don't think that Hal likes to hold up underwear in the field, soiled underwear. So he actually got some cotton towels. So he doesn't do the soil or underwear, he does a soil or cotton towel program. And he had folded it all up, and the stuff right next to the soil is just torn up. But he had folded it very, very tight and small, so there's a bunch that wasn't in contact with the soil. But that's our field day, kind of a fun thing. But there's only 4 guys in our area that are even considering stopping tillage. But yet our drainage ditches are full of soil, right? And you saw the wind blow. So we offer, because you always get 1 or 2 that are asking, so well every year we'll just have a field day, come out on that day, everybody will look. At the same time we'll have Hal come out and do some measurements. Well, it seems to be a pretty good deal for people in the community, but we seem to get less people from the community and more people from farther away. So now we're getting all these people driving 30, 70, 100, 200 miles just to come out and see what we're doing. And hopefully pretty soon we're able to show them integrated livestock. So one thing missing on our farm, since my grandfather lost his leg, it was the livestock portion. So we're pretty excited about the livestock we do have. Butterflies and bees are pretty common, And it's a honeybee, and these guys must not know how to read because they don't get into Google or any instruction manual on how flowers work. You watch them on this vetch, and these imported honeybees that are out to do their job for the beekeepers, they come up to the middle of this vetch and they mess around for a minute or so, and then they fly away. And I watched hundreds of bees this summer, and not one of them had those little full packs on their legs, you know, of what they're doing. We started seeing diversity. I've seen more bugs in the last 3 to 4 years than I've ever been able to see on our farm my entire life. So we're always looking for bugs and always scouting the fields, and the only ones we've ever seen in the past were the ones that we had to go out with insecticides and try to get rid of because they're destroying our crops. So implementing these practices, all of a sudden we're not needing the insecticides anymore. Even though I still buy them and they sit in a rig, it's like we don't ever have to apply them anymore. Well, I can't say ever, but we're not applying them anymore. I returned all of our fungicides this year, and all the insecticides went back. I put 1 gallon of, I did buy 1 gallon of insecticide. We put it on a sweet corn patch the day before we got, 2 days before we got our sweet corn pig, because of a few neighbors that passed from West Nile, and there's quite a few West Nile cases in our area, including myself. So we didn't want to get anybody sick with from our corn. But we're seeing so many more predators out, and it's pretty fun trying to figure out what the one, you know, you take 2 or 3 pictures of something you've never seen before with your cell phone out there, and you go home and you figure out what is it, good or bad? Do I have to spray it or not, right? I'm an applicator. So do I have to kill it or not? And then you try to figure out, well, is it good or bad, or what's it eating? And what's it eating, is that bad enough or I need to go spray it, right? That's the agronomist training in me that we're trying to throw that book away. So these guys are out there on their own, and I didn't spray insecticide. And there's hundreds of these guys, and every single one of them is flying heavy. They pull up to that vetch, they start at the bottom of the plant, and they go left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. About that fast up, and they get a little, whatever they get out of every single one, they go all the way up to the top, and then they fly to the next one. They go to the bottom, they go every single one, and every one of them bees was flying heavy and knew how to work those flowers. And I don't think they could read either. But our bees here know how to take care of the plants that grow here. These plants grow here because, well, I grew them. And the bees are there because, well, nobody brought those in. That's what was here. So that's some observations from the field that I didn't get to observe before I applied those 5 soil health principles. Pretty neat stuff. Had to look those guys up too. I didn't know what they were doing. So we really like how our farm looks today compared to years ago. My kids don't know what years ago looked like on our farm until we went across the road. The story I like to tell is my buddy and I went over to the seed plot with all the signs, and he was just taking these clumps of soil and he's throwing them all around, and they're bouncing and hitting the other guys in the legs. And I tell him, you have to stop that. He says, Dad, what are these things? And he said it so loud, the guys speaking stopped, and everybody looked. I'm like, well, Sam, that's a result of tillage. That's what soil looks like when you till it. And I said it loud enough for everybody to hear it too. But he looked up and he says, well, it's awful. But he was trying to bust them up, and he could not bust up these clumps. He couldn't even lift some of them. So that's pretty exciting stuff. So I like the changes we made on our farm, and I think I really like what our future looks like.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, well, you guys think I've had shoulder surgery. Really, I just have this fancy holster for the clicker. So you've heard the Wilson side of the story, and you've met our family, and you've seen some of the things that we're doing on the farm. But like Jeremy said, the next step is livestock. You've heard about the livestock under the ground, so we're going to talk about the livestock over the ground. And so a little bit of my story is I grew up on a diversified livestock and dairy farm in Maryland. And so my mom and dad grew up on farms right next to each other. My mom's family had a dairy, and my dad's family had a very, very nice herd of Angus cattle. And so that's where I grew up with livestock. And so my dad there on the bottom, that's me in the middle. And then we really wanted to have our children learn animal handling techniques, animal husbandry techniques, and so they started a few years ago in the 4-H leasing program. So we do have a wonderful family, the Ensminger Dairy, just a few miles from our farm, and so they have so graciously let the children lease some of their dairy cattle, and so I think Charlotte's going to pick out another one this year. But we did let them invest in livestock in 2017, and so it has been a very steep learning curve since then. It's very exciting. And so they started with a few pigs, a few goats, and a few little chickens, and this last year it expanded to market ducks, 9 pigs, oh goodness, now they've got 10 goats, 5 of which are pre-pregnant right now, so life's about to get even more interesting on the farm. They raised 43 meat birds this summer, and they have a flock of 30 laying hens as well. And so they are quite busy with their direct market ag products, and it's been just a wonderful experience for them to have those businesses on their own, and it's been a lot of fun for us to shepherd them through that. And it's growing. So we actually run the pigs on cover crops right away when they come as feeders in spring, and the children have orders for 30 pigs this year, and so their businesses are growing quickly. And we have also found that sometimes the joke is on us with the goats. They're quite interesting. You can see that one. Thought it was pretty funny. I was taking this picture. But so what we have basically just a small model of rotational grazing at this point, because our children are young, and we wanted to start them with a small ruminant model. So they are learning. Well, my master's degree is in ruminant nutrition from NDSU, and so that's my background as well. And so I wanted them to start small with this model that they could handle well. They're learning all the principles of ruminant nutrition and rotational grazing, and now they've gotten to the point where they can move their fence on their own, they can move their water tank on their own. You'll see the lawnmower driving by pulling a calf hutch to the newest place where the goats are going to graze, and so it's been just a really good project for them, and we've learned a lot as well, because like I said, this is the return of the ruminants. The livestock have been gone from the Wilson farm for a number of years, so it's fun to bring them back, and we hope to do it on a larger scale in the very near future. It's also been important for the children to learn the lesson of really farm to fork, and we are able to share those lessons with our customers, and it's just been a lot of fun. So the neatest thing that I've seen happen on our farm is, Jeremy's really just a brilliant mind, and so my job, he's our general manager, and my job is to keep up with him. And so, as he's learning so much, we're getting people wanting to come learn, and really we learn just as much from them when they come visit the farm. And so we have throughout the year just multiple events, busloads of people coming and going. We're now, I think we hit 20 countries now that we've had visitors from. And even now we have industry groups coming, so not just farmers and ranchers, but other groups. So we had a group of, ADM brought a group of buyers from Bush's beans. So we did raise chickpeas this last year, garbanzo beans, and so it's exciting to see now that people who really have an influence over food at the grocery store level are coming to learn about what we're doing and about regenerative agriculture. And so this was one of those when we remodeled Grandma and Grandpa's house. The grandpa passed away at 91, and then we had the opportunity to move out to the farm from Jamestown when the kids were little. And we designed a mud room, and it kind of grew from there. This was one of those, if you build it, they will come moments. And so we did with some Also some assistance from an agritourism grant from the Department of Commerce. So we built this room, and then we were also able to install state-of-the-art AV equipment. So we have a nice projector and screen, tables and chairs, and so we're able to host events like this. And we've used this space in ways I never imagined, but it's been a really wonderful place to be able to have a teaching lab and bring visiting scientists in and farmers and ranchers from around the world. And one of the other things that we started doing, gosh, this would be our 6th year with this coming year. Yeah, I think this year will be our 6th year. One of our seed companies so graciously has donated an acre's worth of sweet corn seed every year. And so this year, and we have the community come out and help pick, and then we host sweet corn feed for everyone that's come out and help pick. And so it gets people from town out on the farm, and they tell us they like to get their hands dirty. So so they're out there picking sweet corn, and then we will hit 50,000 meals donated this year. So that has just been an amazing thing to see what 1 acre can do and the impact that it can have on the hungry across North Dakota. And then a unique opportunity came up this year with the goats. And this, in a million years, if you would have told me that we would be having goat yoga in our front yard, I would have just laughed at you. But the children, ever since we got the goats, people have been bothering us, hey, you should do goat yoga. Well, what is goat yoga? Well, this is goat yoga. And so we did connect with a fitness group in town, and they have a lovely yoga instructor, Rachel on the right, and then Lindsay closer to me is the owner. And what we thought would just be fun, okay, the kids own goats and they can do goat yoga, became really an outreach opportunity. So we do, again, you can laugh at this because it does sound kind of funny, we do a 30-minute goat meet and greet before each yoga class. And again, I thought that sounded kind of silly, but it is really important when people are going to interact with livestock that they do have some safety training and understand animal behavior. So that nobody's getting a horn to the eye and things like that. But it opened up a door for us to talk about ruminant nutrition and soil health and rotational grazing and all the things that we've been talking about today to people in town that I don't think normally would have sought out a farm to learn those things from. And so it really is, and we even brought goat yoga so Jamestown's first goat yoga, Bismarck's first goat yoga this last fall. Jeremy's sister-in-law manages the Kirkwood Mall here in Bismarck, and so we brought goat yoga to the mall in Bismarck, and we're able to talk about a lot of the things we've talked about today. So pretty neat opportunities, so we look forward to doing that again this spring. And so we talked about outreach we do on the farm, inviting people out to the farm, but we also do go to town quite a bit. I usually work with about a half a dozen classrooms every winter. This winter things are a little slimmer because I'm down an arm here. And we also love to work with our public library system. So I'm sharing these ideas with you so that you can maybe just take home one of these ideas and apply it yourself, and not be afraid to open the doors or go to town and visit with a classroom and take them some ag books and teach them about what you're doing. Because that picture at the bottom there, we grew a bucket of carrots, and I took them into the library for story time about soil, and sweet kids pulling carrots. They've never been, some of them had never pulled carrots. We sent everybody home. This was a soil conservation project that was partially funded through our local soil conservation district. And we read books about soil. We sent everybody home with a little container gardening kit. And one of the moms came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, thank you for doing this project today. I didn't know that carrots had tops. And I didn't know they were that shape. They'd only seen baby carrots in the bag in the grocery store." People, this is Jamestown. Like, it's, this is rural North Dakota, but we have really a lot of opportunities where we can reach people that really have just a basic understanding of food and agriculture. And so I share that with you. Also, our local librarian has become one of our biggest champions of agriculture in our community. And even on her own, every year through the summer reading program, I would come and do a little story time, and the kids go along and help me out. But they, on their own, the library started a whole Farmer Appreciation Week. So when we walked in there to do story time, we have also gotten some grants to get our library stocked with ag books. The kids from the rural towns that the bookmobile hit, they had been asking for more ag books, so we delivered. We got them more ag books. And they had pulled all the ag books and put them all over the library, and we brought in samples of crops and everything. It was just, you know, all you have to do is just kind of pique someone's interest, and they just keep asking more questions. So some resources that I find very useful that I want to share with you today: the American Farm Bureau Foundation for Agriculture, agfoundation.org. They have a fantastic list of recommended ag publications and books about agriculture that have been reviewed by farmers and ranchers for accuracy. So a combine isn't called a corn planter and things like this. A Common Ground is also, I'm a volunteer for that program, wonderful resource connecting farm women to non-farm women and really helping us have conversations about where food comes from. So find our commonground.org is a great resource. And so I would encourage you, each of you are learning new things, and you're doing such wonderful things on your farms and ranches. And our farms and ranches are so unique. We have so much to celebrate. And so don't be afraid to step out and tell your story as well. I'll just close today in just sharing with you that I feel so privileged that we get to be the stewards of birth and of growth every day. And we really, it's our goal to leave a legacy so that our children understand the importance of soil health and the importance of making sure that our land is as good or much better than when we got it. And also that our children are able to communicate to non-farm urban and rural residents about agriculture and be able to tell the story as well. And so we are a work in progress, but we've learned a lot. And so I wanted to share this with you. This is actually from a men's devotional by Pastor Tony Evans. And so he talks about all different occupations. And so you can plug in your occupation wherever those brackets are. He talked about teachers and doctors and lawyers. You can plug in rancher if you want, but I plugged in farmer. He said, a farmer shouldn't just be a farmer. He or she ought to be God's representative in the agricultural field, so people know what God looks like when God helps hungry people. Now you've connected career, if that's what you feel God wants you to do, with purpose. And now you get the power of God to fulfill it. So with that, I want to thank you so much for giving Jeremy and I the opportunity to speak today. I want to thank you so much for honoring us with the Leopold Award. It's been such a humbling experience. Ken and Bonnie and Jerry and Renee, both of your families, you're just superstars to us. When we won, I had a moment like the movie Wayne's World, like, we're not worthy, because it's just, you guys are amazing. Your families have helped us so much. We've learned so much from you. Also, Joe and Patty Brecker, who are the other finalists, just tremendous people. It's really a privilege. And I would also like to thank the host of sponsors. There's just this incredible list of sponsors, so do take a look at those organizations. They're doing great things, and the individual families as well that have donated and sponsored the Leopold Award. It really, truly, truly an honor. And so if you would like to connect with us, Jeremy is much more active on Twitter. I play over on Facebook and Instagram. And if you'd like to email us, if you're coming through Jamestown, let's connect. We're 2 miles from 94 and 2 miles from 281. So we do have an open door policy where we like to have people come over and see firsthand what we're doing. So again, thank you very much. And with that, I think, anything else? Do we have time for questions right now?
Yeah.
Oh, do we? Okay. Okay. I'll let you.
Questions for Jeremy and Sarah? Casey.
First of all, congratulations on the award. We talk a lot about no-tilling.